Good morning. It's good to be with you. I'm Jessica Layton in for Joe in Savannah today. And we start this hour with the powerful storms that are making their way across the eastern part of the U.S. In New Jersey, strong winds and driving rain took down trees and flooded streets. In fact, people had to push their cars through that deep water. In Paterson, just east of New York City, tow trucks lined up to pull stalled cars out of the street. The mayor there says the crew spent the afternoon rescuing people who were stranded by the floodwater.
We've received over 20 phone calls relative to incidents involving the weather. We've had at least 12 people who had to be rescued. As you could see, we've had some cars submerged in the water.
Meanwhile, first responders were also out in central Pennsylvania going through neighborhoods with rafts to help people and their pets who were trapped by the fast rising water. NBC News correspondent Emily Ikeda is following the storm and has the latest from Muncie, New York, on the border with New Jersey. Emily, good morning.
Hey there. Well, that same system that devastated parts of the Midwest overnight, carving out a path of destruction on the East Coast as well. You can see this massive tree that was snapped and uprooted, practically swallowing this car here. And scenes like this have been seen across the Northeast because of the force of heavy winds and rains as well. In parts of the region, they saw up to 6 inches of rain that led to some flash flooding, turning streets and neighborhoods into waterways and leading to water rescues in parts of Pennsylvania and in New Jersey, where families and pets were seen pulled to safety on rafts. It also snarled air travel from D.C. up to Boston. Major airports saw ground stops and delays. It led to more than 10,000 flight cancellations and delays. And unfortunately, with more rain on the way today, those travel headaches are likely to linger. Back to you.
All right, Emily Ikeda, thanks so much. For more weather updates, let's get a closer look at your morning news now. Weather meteorologist Angie Lastman joins me now. Angie, good morning.
Hey there. Good morning. We've got another kind of active day across parts of New England. Notice that rain still in place early this morning, stretching from parts of New York and Vermont all the way to the coast. Plenty of alerts up, 13 million flood alerts at this point. Notice we've got some flash flood warnings included in that here as we get our day started. So roadways likely going to be a little soggy out there even as we get through the early morning hours. Notice this system still continuing to spin right near that coast, leaving us with the heavy rain across parts of the Northeast. We'll see drier conditions from New York to points south into Philadelphia and Washington, D.C. as compared to what we dealt with yesterday, but not so much for parts of New England. That's where we'll still see some of this pesky kind of intense rain hanging around. By tomorrow, we'll see less of coverage when it comes to the rainfall, but still looking for some kind of scattered showers across parts of New England. And the good news is that flood risk will start to kind of ease across that region. Not the case today, though. This is your flash flood risk. You can see where you've got those brighter pinks. That's a moderate risk stretching from portions of southern Vermont all the way into Massachusetts and Connecticut. We likely, again, will see those really intense rainfall rates per hour. So anywhere from 1 inch to 2 inches. Again, already saturated grounds. This is going to be problematic for some more flooding concerns through the day today. And by the time this is all said and done by Thursday, picking up another additional couple of inches of rain, up to 3 inches in some spots. As far as the heat goes, it still is building across parts of the Southwest, and we've got that high humidity remaining across the Gulf Coast. Notice Houston's feels like temperature today, 107 degrees. We've got 105 for what it'll feel like in Wichita. El Paso heads to 103 for your actual temperature, and there's more where that came from as we get into tomorrow. 112 for your actual temperature in Phoenix. We've got 89 in Kansas City, but feeling like 97. This is very typical for end of July, but we will likely see some potential record highs across much of these regions as we get through the next couple of days, hanging out into those 100 plus actual temperatures Friday, Saturday, and Sunday in Phoenix. Back to you.
All right, Angie, thank you. Overseas, a wildfire emergency is gripping southwestern Europe this morning. Massive fires across France and Spain have forced hundreds of thousands to evacuate as extreme heat and dry conditions fuel those flames. Some of the fires remain out of control, including what is the largest ever recorded in Spain. NBC News international correspondent Raf Sanchez is near the front lines in southern France with the very latest on all this. Raf, good morning.
Jessica, good morning. We're outside one of the command centers where the battle against the flames is being coordinated. You can see these officers are actually poring over a map right now. And one of the commanders here told us there is basically flame in every direction outside of this town. Earlier this morning, the fires were only about a mile that way, and this fight is far from over.
Relentless walls of flame raging across Europe as fire crews and military personnel battle historic blazes in France, Spain, and Italy. More than 360,000 residents and tourists have now been evacuated. One of the fiercest battles being fought in France's iconic Bordeaux wine region. The view from the front line captured on this French firefighter's body camera as their team confronts a blaze on a country road.
It's very difficult for the firemen to fight the fire.
France for the first time facing so-called fire clouds, pillars of smoke and flame so big they can generate their own lightning. France's President Macron on Monday calling the fires the worst situation they've had to deal with since World War II. While Spain confronts the largest wildfire in its history after separate fires merged into a monster blaze west of Madrid. Italy also now battling fires of their own. At this popular beach resort, aircraft flying perilously low before dipping into the sea to gather salt water to douse the flames, as Europe braces for more to come.
Now, there is good news and there's bad news in terms of the fight to contain the fire here in the Bordeaux region. Good news, over the last 3 nights, fire crews say they have kept this blaze from getting any bigger. Bad news, it is already in the mid-90s here right now. Very, very hot temperatures. That means more dry kindling, and it means more fuel for the flames. Jessica.
All right, we'll be keeping a close eye on that, Raf. Thank you. Later this morning on Capitol Hill, Dr. Anthony Fauci will face a Senate committee hearing as part of an ongoing probe into the origins of the COVID virus. Fauci became a household name during the pandemic, leading the U.S. response and serving both former President Biden and President Trump. The hearing comes after Republican Senator Rand Paul released thousands of pages of Fauci's journal detailing reflections on how each administration handled that pandemic. NBC News political reporter Megan Brand joins us now to talk more about this. Megan, good morning. What is the purpose exactly of today's hearing, and what are we expecting to see?
Hey, Jessica, good morning. Yeah, we can expect this to be a contentious hearing as Dr. Fauci appears before lawmakers. Senator Rand Paul has repeatedly criticized Dr. Fauci, accusing him of having lied to Congress, accusing him of having destroyed records. Now, these are things that Dr. Fauci has denied, but they've clashed previously in congressional hearings, and so we can likely expect to be there to be more fireworks later today. Now, in terms of the substance of the hearing, we can expect it to be discussed about the origins of COVID-19. There's been some disagreement within the intelligence community and the federal government about where COVID-19 originated, whether it came from natural human contact with an infected animal or whether it originated from a lab leak. We can also expect there to be conversations and questions about the U.S. response to COVID and the COVID-19 guidelines at the time. Now, as well as you mentioned, Senator Paul has released thousands of pages of Dr. Fauci's personal journal, and so we can expect that to come up a whole lot today in the hearing as well.
Megan, we know that Senator Paul, as you touched on, has accused Fauci of lying not only to Congress but also to the public during COVID and after. What is the senator hoping to demonstrate with the release of that journal?
Yeah, so Senator Rand Paul has repeatedly accused Dr. Fauci of lying. And so in releasing this journal, what Senator Paul is aiming to do is to try to paint the picture of Fauci as someone who expressed certain thoughts privately but said something else publicly. Now, again, Dr. Fauci has expressed that he has never lied to Congress. He has not lied about his view on COVID. But the journal is also really interesting because it provides this near daily account about what was going through Dr. Fauci's mind during the height of the pandemic when he had this rising profile. So he reflects in that journal about things like the COVID-19 death toll, the case count as well as things like his rising profile in the public, talking about things like his calls with journalists as well as his calls with celebrities.
Really interesting to get that sort of play-by-play of what this person who was at the head of it was thinking when so many of us were also just trying to survive the days. In the journal and in public, we know that Fauci has not held back about his views on the Trump administration. What is he saying about him?
Yeah, so Dr. Fauci was pretty transparent in terms of what he thought about President Trump in those personal journals. At one point, he wrote that President Trump was on the campaign trail spewing nonsense. He also called President Trump someone who is really out of control. He called him a true embarrassment. And he also reflected on a moment, for example, right before the final presidential debate when he noted a bit of irony in terms of President Trump relying on Dr. Fauci for health advice and insight into his health and the COVID pandemic. But at the same time, President Trump was criticizing Dr. Fauci publicly, calling him things like an idiot and a disaster. So he was very transparent about what he thought about President Trump. And this is something that we can expect members of Congress to also press Dr. Fauci on as well.
Almost certainly will be some fireworks there today on Capitol Hill. Megan, thank you so much. World leaders and White House officials were at the National Cathedral yesterday for the funeral of South Carolina Republican Senator Lindsey Graham. President Trump, Vice President J.D. Vance, and Fox personality Sean Hannity were among those who eulogized Graham, all of them paying respects to Graham's work ethic and reflecting on his legacy in the Senate. The 71-year-old died on July 11th following an aortic dissection at his Washington, D.C. home. The president delivered this tribute.
We gather in the deepest gratitude and profoundest sorrow to honor a beloved friend, a devoted brother, a respected statesman, a giant of the United States Senate. Lindsey rose from a small town in rural South Carolina, a place he loved so much, to become a constant fixture of American politics at the highest level. There can be no doubt that he lived absolutely to the fullest. He died doing the work he was born to do.
Turning now to developing news out of the Middle East. U.S. Central Command says Iran launched new attacks against U.S. forces in the region overnight. The U.S. says they intercepted the incoming missiles. Now, these strikes come after the two sides paused direct attacks for days. Meanwhile, the Senate was also busy overnight working to advance some new sanctions against Russia in the war with Ukraine. NBC News senior White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez is following all of this and joins us now with the very latest. Gabe, good morning.
Jessica, good morning. The possibility for another escalation in this war ramped up again overnight. The U.S. Embassy in Baghdad reminding Americans of that do not travel advisory for Iraq due to the potential for missiles and drones in the region. Now, the war the president had predicted would last 4 to 6 weeks is now entering its 6th month.
Overnight, the Iran war flaring up again. After a days-long pause in direct strikes between the two countries, U.S. Central Command says Iran launched multiple ballistic missiles in an attempted surprise attack on American forces in the Middle East. Adding the missiles were successfully intercepted. Iran says it targeted U.S. forces in Jordan in response to America's, quote, hostile actions. Meanwhile, CENTCOM also confirming overnight U.S. and Saudi armed forces jointly conducted strikes in Iraq against Iran-aligned terrorists. Though just hours earlier, President Trump had touted progress in peace talks, while again threatening strikes against Iran's major bridges and power plants if there was no long-term agreement, telling Fox News.
I think we have a very strong position right now. They know I'm going to do that if they don't make a deal. The bridges are going to be gone.
The president also meeting face-to-face at the White House with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu for the first time since the war began. Earlier in the day, the president brushing off Israel's concerns about Iran trying to rebuild its nuclear program at one of its key facilities, Pickaxe Mountain.
I don't need Bibi to tell me that. Bibi's telling me that because he wants me to stay involved. I know exactly what's going on at Pickaxe. It's not a big problem.
Netanyahu now insisting their alliance is strong.
It was one of the best meetings that we've had.
While questioning the eventual success of U.S. diplomacy with Iran.
I'm skeptical about the deal, and I say it openly.
President Trump also meeting separately in the Oval Office with Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky, who says they spoke about acquiring more Patriot interceptor missiles for his country's ongoing war with Russia.
I shared what we need, our needs. I shared it with the president today.
Overnight, the Senate taking the first steps to pass a sweeping Russian sanctions bill named after the late Senator Lindsey Graham, who championed it.
That bill would place new sanctions on Russian officials and allow the White House to impose tariffs on countries that purchase Russian oil and gas. It is not clear when the Senate will hold a vote on final passage, but senators are set to leave town for recess at the end of next week. Jessica.
All right, Gabe, thank you. In the Caribbean, new video has turned up in the expanding search for an American woman now missing for a week. The North Carolina mother vanished while on a trip to Grenada. Her family pleading for help in finding her. Here's NBC News correspondent Jesse Kirsch with what the footage is showing.
Our first look at Liz Waddell in Grenada right before she vanished. The 43-year-old American's family releasing this surveillance footage, saying it shows Waddell at her Caribbean Airbnb last Wednesday. Watch the North Carolina mother walk near the shoreline around 11:44 a.m. She heads toward the jetty, splashing into the water at 11:47 a.m. At 11:50, a small boat floats by. Soon after, Waddell's family says you can see her friend adjust a beach chair before roughly 10 minutes pass, and on the other side of the screen, Waddell starts swimming away through the bay's roughly 5-foot deep water. Island police say there's no video showing Waddell returning to land.
We remain hopeful, very hopeful, that she is somewhere on the island, alive and safe.
I'm Liz Waddell.
Waddell, who posts on social media about her physical therapy work, is described as 5 feet tall with a medium build. Police say she'd been on the island almost 2 weeks when she disappeared.
My wife is a loving, free-spirited person.
Her husband, Kalen, flew to Grenada after she vanished, writing, "He did this swim yesterday. It is easy. There are lots of rocks you can stop at if you need." Waddell's husband adding, "I am heartbroken. Please continue to send love." And according to Waddell's husband, she was swimming in blue and white striped shorts and an orange top. He also says she did not have her wallet or her shoes. Back to you.
Jesse Kirsch, thank you.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.